Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Morning Devo with Bo. Super stoked you can be with us, especially if you're driving in your car to California. That's got to be way cool. You're listening to the live Morning Devo with Bo. Super stoked you guys could be with me today. My name's Bo Willette. You can always check out the archives at Bo Willette on my YouTube channel. That's my personal YouTube channel. And it is just filled with a bunch of these Devos going through the Bible. And so I love to read the Bible. I love to go through the Bible. I love to go through it kind of book by book, verse by verse, just really roll through it. Not kind of get stuck in such a little small area that we don't kind of get the big picture of the books. And it reminds me of when I first started reading the Bible at around the age of 17-ish. And just how exciting it was just to kind of go through it and get familiar with it. So I really hope these devotions are kind of there for you to be able to get familiar with the Bible, also be able to grow and just maybe an understanding a little more, a little insight into why the Bible says the things that it does. And you might be surprised at some of the things it says. So we've gone through the first 4 books of the Bible. We're finishing up the 5th book of the Bible. So we are completing what's called the Torah, the law of God, right? And this is the law, the covenant law through Moses that's been given through Moses. So just want to say hi to everybody in the comment corner too. Just love you guys so much. Super special always to be with you daily. So let's get into it, right? Let's get in. Now, before we finish the book, we got to go through the Song of Moses. It's a long song. It's one of those songs where, it has like 40 something verses. So can you imagine like singing a song with 40 something verses in it? I mean, that's a long song. You think, a 7-minute Grateful Dead tune is long? That's nothing compared to this song. This song's like it's like the epic Rush album. If you've ever heard Rush, sometimes they would make these albums based off of kind of some kind of story or something. And but it's like an epic like that. It's just a huge song. And it talks about all kinds of interesting things. Now, you try to figure out what kind of music this must have been put to. It's an interesting song. It has a lot of different, I think, styles to it. So I want you to kind of just use your imagination and go, what does this sound like? Does it sound like country? Does it sound kind of like, classical? Does it sound a little bit more harder, like hard rock? What is this? So let's read it. It says, "Listen, O heavens and earth, listen to what I say. My words shall fall upon you like the gentle rain and dew, like rain upon the tender grass, like showers on the hillside." And so this song is supposed to be something that the people of Israel always recall in their minds when they are being judged. So when something's happening to them, another nation is taking them over, they're going into captivity, they're going through suffering, people are trying to execute them. We've seen this in our time, right, in world history, not too long ago, where there was a whole regime that wanted to wipe out the Jews. Well, the Jews are told that when these things are to happen, that they are to look at their spiritual life and see that God is judging them in a spiritual way, for their disobedience to the law, to uphold the law of God. And so God is making this big declaration in this section. It's really radical that, hey, there's this song that you need to remember. And here's the song, right? Hey, let my words fall on you like rain. Let it be gentle. Let my words just wash you, right? The idea of the word being like water. Have you heard that before? Yeah, it's very New Testament verbiage. So remember, everything in the New Testament has its roots in the Old Testament. And so this is the idea, is that God's words fall upon you like a gentle rain and dew, right? Like rain upon the tender grass, like showers on the hillside. Something beautiful, like God's word just fall on you like that. Now it says, "I will proclaim the greatness of the Lord. How glorious is he. He is the rock. His work is perfect." God is our rock, right? He's our stability, right? All of his work is perfect. God does good things. God has the right thing in mind. God knows what you need. He knows what I need. He knows he's in control. He is perfect. There is no darkness in him. Is there a New Testament passage that talks about that in him there's no darkness at all, right? That he's unapproachable light. The idea of God being perfect. Yeah, that's where these guys get it from, right? This is where they're getting all their stuff from. It's all from the Torah. So I will proclaim the greatness of the Lord. I love that idea that he's our rock. That's kind of cool, right? He is the rock of our salvation. He is the strength of our life, right? He is our hope and our inspiration. You know, have you ever heard that wonderful worship song? So everything he does is just and fair. So it's the idea of God's character, right? God is his character is our Father, and he is just and fair. Do I trust that? Do I believe that today? Do I believe that what God has put in my life, he's just and fair, that God will do the right thing? So it says he is faithful without sin. Wow. God's character is one where he is faithful without sin. I think of the New Testament writer Paul in the book of Timothy. Even if we are faithless, he remains what? Faithful. Isn't that cool? He is faithful. He cannot disown himself, the Bible says in 2 Timothy. That's right. He is faithful. He is without sin, no spot, no blemish at all, right? It says, but Israel has become corrupt, smeared with sin. So God shows his, in a sense, upholding of the covenant, right? His character is one where he will uphold that covenant. He will stay faithful in that marriage to Israel. He will be there no matter what. Man, he is through the thick and thin, right? That kind of idea. He is faithful. He is not the one to blame within the breaking of the covenant. And sometimes we can blame God for a lot of things, and we can get harsh on God. But notice what it says, but Israel has become corrupt, smeared with sin. They are no longer his. They are stubborn, twisted generation. In this way, is this the way you treat Jehovah? Huh? It's like a question. Is this the way you treat Jehovah? O foolish people, is not God your Father? Has he not created you? Oh man, very cool, right? God our Creator. Has he not created you? Is not God your Father? Right? These things are quoted in the New Testament. Yeah, these kind of these ideas, right? Has he not established you and made you strong? What happens to a society when we just abandon that we are created and we did not create ourselves, but we are made in the image of God? What would the ramifications be in a world that rejects that idea? Maybe we would become self-sufficient. Maybe we would become self-righteous. Maybe we would become prideful. Maybe we would become, arrogant. Maybe we would become super prideful. Maybe to the point of being super narcissistic. All that. But this says, hey, God has established you and made you strong. Remember the days of long ago. Remember the past. Remember where you came from, right? Why, this is what I always wonder about today. Why doesn't people think about why are we living in a day and age where, say, monogamy is really popular? There was maybe a time where monogamy wasn't popular. Well, let's go back there and find out why people all of a sudden went to monogamy. What was the big thing about monogamy that was so important, where there were laws made against being monogamous? Sometimes we forget the past and we don't realize why we're living the way we live in the future. That maybe the reason why things are the way they are today is because of dangerous things that happened in the past. Maybe the things in the past weren't going so well after all. So Laura says America has become very prideful. Man, Laura, I think that's even an understatement, right? I think we're beyond prideful. I think it's so narcissistic. It's unreal. It's grossly pouring out of it's coming out of our pores, out of our being, the narcissism. And that's the rough part is, we have to remember we're created, that we're accountable to God. Those kind of things really do matter. And they really do change the way we think of other people and how we look at everybody. So interesting. So anyway, this song starts off with a cool bang, right? And then we've only got to verse 7, right? Where it says, ask your father and the aged men, and they will tell you about the days of old. You got to ask the old people. Maybe some of the elder people know some good stuff. Now, it's not the only people that we talk to. We don't want to get that wrong, right? Or else you're living in a time where you're just listening to elderly people, right? But to understand history, sometimes it's good to listen to the older historian, maybe the older economic guy, like a Thomas Sowell, right? An elderly statesman in the world of economics. Maybe he has something to contribute. Maybe we want to listen to him, though he's in his 90s, but he's maybe got a good understanding of what things we need to avoid. So it says, they will tell you all about it. When God divided up the world among the nations, he gave each of them as a supervising angel. Whoa, interesting passage. A little Daniel 10-like, just for you prophecy people, or you people that are into some of the interesting parts of the Bible. Read Daniel 10 and then come back to this passage and check it out. And it's kind of interesting. Divided up the world among the nations. He gave them each a supervising angel. Whoa, very interesting. But he appointed none for Israel. For Israel was God's own personal possession. Woo, interesting. Yahweh hanging out with Israel. Very interesting. God protected them in the howling wilderness as though they were the apple of his eye. Ooh, very cool. First mention of apple of his eye. It's also in the book of Zechariah. When something's the apple of your eye, it's what? It's right there. It's at your pupil. It's ready. You're looking. You're serious. It's right there before your eyes. It's right there. And God says, Israel, you're like the apple of my eye. Very special. Very interesting. Very intimate too. So it says, he spreads his wings over them, even as an eagle overspreads her young. Very Isaiah 40-like, right? Very Jesus. I long to what? I long to gather you together like a mother hen gathers her chicks, kind of idea, right? An eagle overspreads her young, So you could see where all this stuff in the Bible comes from, man. This Song of Moses, by the way, is super famous, man. This thing's hugely popular of its day. It became so famous, it was famous for thousands and thousands of years. And it says, let's see, she carries them upon her wing. Okay, this is very Isaiah-like. The prophet Isaiah kind of used these analogies of God and Israel. And it says, as does the Lord his people, when the Lord alone was leading them, and they lived without foreign gods. God gave them fertile hilltops, rolling fertile fields, honey from the rock, and olive from the stony ground. Again, this is a song, so I'm trying to get you guys to think of what kind of song this is, what kind of music's being put to this one. He gave them milk and meat, choice Bashan rams and goats from the finest of the wheat, and they drank the sparkling wine. But Israel was soon overfed, yes, fat and bloated. Ooh, interesting. A nation can get fat and bloated and can get overfed. Then in plenty they forsook their God. They shrugged away the rock of their salvation. They became self-sufficient, right? They have forgotten where they came from, and they thought it was their own strength and might that got them where they were at. So they became unthankful, right? Because they no longer needed to be thankful for anything because they forgot God. They thought it was themselves that did it. And so Israel began to follow foreign gods, and Jehovah was very angry, and he was jealous of his people. Now, it's interesting, but you can kind of parallel this, not just with Israel, but you can parallel this with North America, South America, Africa, Europe, Asia. You can go around the world, and you can parallel this kind of idea. You were once thankful. You were once walking with God, and then you turned away, and then you went a different direction. You became self-sufficient, prideful, filled with your own greed and envy. Collusion ruled over everything. You were corroded. Everything was contaminated. That kind of idea. It says, and Jehovah became very angry, and he was jealous of his people. This is quoted in the book of James, the half-brother of Jesus, in his book in the New Testament. Again, I'm just bringing up some of the quotes, but there's so many quotes from the New Testament in this section. It's very cool. And it says they sacrificed to heathen gods. God's jealousy was one of the ideas being married, right? That you love your bride, right? You are jealous for your bride, meaning you want your bride to be for what? You and you alone. That kind of idea. So it's very monogamous, right? This kind of idea, this analogy between God and Israel. It says they, Israel, sacrificed to heathen gods, to new gods never before worshipped. They spurned the rock who had made them, forgetting it was God who had given them birth. Again, forgetting God. God saw that what they were doing and detested them. His sons and daughters were insulting him. He said, I will abandon them. What kind of music is being put to this one, huh? See what happens to them, for they are stubborn, faithless generation. And this is, by the way, quoted in the idea of this is quoted in the book of Galatians, chapter 1, that we are a part of the generation that we're living in is a faithless generation, a contaminated generation. And but here it says, you're a faithless generation, stubborn people. They have made me very jealous of their idols, which are not gods at all. Now I, in turn, will make them jealous by giving my affections to the foolish Gentile nations of the world. Oh man, all the way back thousands of years ago, God says through the Song of Moses, right, that guess what? I'm going to make Israel jealous through my love that I'm going to give to the nation, the Gentile nations. I'm going to offer something to the Gentile nations. I'm going to give grace to the Gentile nations. I'm going to give a part of me to the Gentile nations, right? I'm going to show the Gentile nations how good I am. This is quoted in the book of Romans 9, 10, and 11. This idea is threaded throughout that section. Again, here you see where this is all coming from. So God says, hey, you know what? I am going to give affections to the Gentile nations. You're going to divorce me. You're going to leave me. You're going to detach from me. I'm going to reach out to the Gentile world, and that kind of idea. And so it says, for my anger has kindled a fire that burns to the depth of the underworld, consuming the earth and all its crops and settling its mountains on fire. Wow. I guess this is the heavy metal part. And it says, I will heap evils upon them and shoot them down with my arrows. I will waste them with hunter, burning fever, and fatal disease. I will devour them. I will set wild beasts upon them to rip them apart with their teeth, and deadly serpents crawling in the dust. Wow, what poetry, man. What language of judgment, right? Just this radical allegory is going on of, you know what, judgment's going to happen. And it's all, and Moses, man, the lyrics are just vivid, right? And that's the cool thing about songs. Sometimes they have such hyperbole at times. There's like an overexpression of things to help people understand just exactly what is being spoken of. So there's no doubt of what is being shared, you know. And God, rip them apart with their teeth, and deadly serpents crawling in the dust. Outside, verse 25, the enemy's sword, insight, and plague shall terrorize young men and girls alike, the baby nursing at the breast, the aged men. I had decided to scatter them to distant lands so that even the memory of them would disappear. Wow. But then I thought, my enemies will boast. Israel is destroyed by my own might. It was not the Lord who did it. Israel is a stupid nation, foolish without understanding. Oh, that they were wise. So it's interesting. It's like this rhetorical kind of, well, if they're destroyed, then what are people going to think about God? You know, kind of idea, right? And so you have this like rhetorical kind of part of this poetry, this lyric that's going on. And so you see all different ways of writing are even within this song. It's very cool. It's very very thoughtful, you know. But then I thought, my enemies will boast. Israel is destroyed by our own might. It was not the Lord who did it. Israel, and then it gets back into Israel is a stupid nation, foolish without understanding. Oh, that they were wise. Oh, that they could understand. Oh, that they would know that they are getting what they are getting into. Woo, what a lesson for us, man. Oh, man. I think of that. Bo, man, you're dumb. Man, Bo, you ain't smart at all. You ain't wise. You a foolish guy, And man, I'm first to admit it. No, I don't need to boast in my wisdom at all, because guess what? Compared to God, man, I am dumb. And there's no doubt about it. And it says, oh, that they would know what they're getting into. Gosh, sometimes the smartest probably thing is just to realize just how ignorant you are, how little you really do know, and how that kind of way of thinking really helps you in your mind to have yourself in the proper place in the universe. Oh, how we would know what we were getting into. That's a big one, right? How one would know. Well, how they would know what they are getting into. How could one single enemy chase 1,000 of them? Right? They become, in a sense, out of touch. Right? One person comes to get them and they all run. They all scatter. They become paranoid. Isaiah, what is it? Chapter 30. That's what this is. Right? Isaiah talks about this. And it says, and two put 10,000 to flight. Again, the idea of being paranoid, being confused, being muddled. When we refuse the living God, we choose another route. We become confused. We become, in a sense, dumbfounded. We become muddled on many different ideas and thoughts. Unless their rock had abandoned them, unless the Lord has destroyed them, or unless the rock had abandoned them, unless the Lord had destroyed them. It's a question. Again, it's like kind of, thinking through it. But the rock of other nations is not like our rock. Interesting. The rock of other nations is not like our rock. And you see always continually in this song, kind of that comparative idea of the nations have idols and gods. And it keeps repeating that there's no gods really. They're not really gods, that I'm the only true and living God. But here it kind of puts it in a cool way. God is compared to as a rock. We see this in the New Testament as well. And it says that our rock is not like their rock. Kind of interesting. Prayers to the gods are valueless. So he's talking about the other nations, right? Your prayers to these other gods, they're valueless. They have no value. They act like men of Sodom and Gomorrah. Their deeds are bitter with poison. They drink the wine of serpent venom, but Israel is my special people, sealed as jewels within my treasury. Vengeance is mine. Ooh, another quote from the book of Romans, right? Israel, again, is a treasure to God. Notice it talked about its judgment, but then it talks about in this rhetorical, like, well, and it has this thought about, well, what is God going to do? How is God going to treat Israel? And then it gets into how God affirms his love for his bride, his Israel. So it's kind of cool. And then it says, vengeance is mine. I declare the punishment of all her enemies. Their doom is sealed. The idea, it's followed in the book of Revelation, the last book of the Bible. The idea that all the enemies of Israel will come under judgment of God. This will be ultimately fulfilled. The Lord will see his people rightly and will have compassion on them when they slip. Isn't that cool? When they slip, God's going to have what? Compassion on them. So you might think, oh man, this has been a harsh thing. No, there's been harsh language in the song, no doubt. It's been super hyperbole in a lot of ways, meaning it's been kind of extreme. But then it gets into this rhetorical idea about God loving his people. And that is God really going to show himself faithless to his people? No. It keeps saying that God will show himself compassionate and faithful. He will have compassion, it says, on them when they slip. He will watch their power ebb away, both slave and free, and then God will ask, where are their gods? So when they're trusting in their other gods, God will ask them, where are their gods? This is something that was fulfilled in the prophets. So I must say, a lot of the Bible comes back to this jam. This jam is, I think, a central part of a lot of the Bible and a lot of the other themes and language structures of the Bible. And then it says, where are their gods, their rocks they claimed to be their refuge? Where are their gods now? What is your refuge? Where's the place you run? Where's the place you go? That's the idea. Why not go to the living God? You can go right now. Man, who are you trusting in? Trusting in government? You trust the government? You trust this? You trust that? You trust your friends? You trust this? What are you trusting? Well, why don't you just put your trust in the living God, your creator? Maybe that's the way that you got to go. And yeah, maybe you have to admit some failure. Maybe you have to admit a lot of failure. But you know what? You can do that with God. He's compassionate. He'll be there for you when you slip, right? It says, where are these gods now to whom they sacrifice their fat and wine? Let those gods arise and help them. It says, don't you see that I alone am God? So it's now the lyrics are getting kind of funny and sarcastic. Man, help your God. Go help your God. You know what I mean? Where are those gods now? To whom they sacrificed fat and wine. Let those gods arise. Hey, you got a God, that you're worshiping. Let's see that God rise. Let's see that God rise from the dead. We're not going to see it. And then God affirms that he is the only God. But it's kind of jokingly. It's kind of in pun, right? You get that idea. Hey, where are your gods now? Hey, you've been sacrificing all this wine and fat, all this good stuff to God. Let him rise. Let him help you. It ain't going to happen, right? So very, you see this in the book of Kings with the prophet Elijah and his dealing with the false prophets, those of Baal, worshiping a false deity. In this kind of language, this kind of, if you will, sarcastic language, right? Where are your gods kind of thing. So then it says, don't you see that I alone am God? I kill and make make live. I wound and heal. No one delivers from my power. God is in control. God is the powerful one. I raise my hand to heaven and vow by my existence, and I will whet the lightning of my sword. I hurl my punishments upon my enemies. My arrows shall be drunk with blood. My sword devours the flesh and blood of all the slain and captives. The heads of the enemy are gory with blood. Wow. Ooh, that's a pretty heavy metal section right there, I would say. There was a Christian metal band called With Blood Comes Cleansing. Ooh, put them on. That's some heavy stuff. And that's what I kind of picture here at this point, in the tune, God's vengeance is thorough. Now, the cool thing about that is that you don't have to have vengeance on people. If vengeance is God's, then guess what? You can relinquish your right to retaliate. You can literally love your enemy now. Why? Because God is going to do what he does. He's going to have vengeance. See, you can relinquish your right. You don't have to get vengeance. You don't have to fight, right? God will do that work for you. That's the idea for Israel. And it says, praise his people, Gentile nations. Wow. You Gentile nations, praise the people of God, for he will avenge his people, taking vengeance on his enemies, purifying his land and his people. Wow. What a song, right? And then it says, when Moses and Jesus, or Joshua, had recited all the words of this song to the people, Yahshua is Jesus, same name. Moses made these comments. Meditate upon all the laws I have given you today and pass them to your children. These laws are not mere words. They are your life. Wow. They're not mere words. They are your life. Man, what a cool passage. God's word is not just words, they are your life. Man, they are the thing we are to eat and to take in and to cling to as our life. Though through obeying them, you will live long, plentiful lives in the land you are going to possess across the Jordan. The same day the Lord said to Moses, go to Mount Nebo in the Abraham mountains in the land of Moab across from Jericho. Climb to its heights and look out across the land of Canaan, the land I am giving to all the people of Israel. So you can check out all the land, Moses. And he says, after you see the land, you must die and join your ancestors, just as Aaron your brother died in Mount Hor and joined them. For you dishonored me among the people of Israel at the spring of Meribah Kadesh, in the wilderness of Zin. You will see spread out before you the land I am giving the people of Israel, but you will not enter it. Very interesting, right? Moses will not enter the land, but he's going to see it. But we see, interestingly enough, in the New Testament, there's something called the transfiguration of Christ. And guess who's with Jesus in the land? Oh, man, it's Moses. Isn't that interesting? So I guess Moses got in, but just a little different than all of us. So that's for you Bible kind of scholars out there to think through it, right? Yeah, how did Moses die? It doesn't tell us, right? It says he was strong, that he had great eyesight, everything in his old age. But here God says, hey, you wrote the song, you gave it to the people, now it's time for you to check out. But you can check out the land, look at it, see the promise, see that it's real, it's right there. And faith gives us eyes to see that promised land. Faith in Christ gives us eyes to see something ahead. Our dwelling with God, right? Our promised land, our dwelling with Jesus. When you have faith, you can see that. And man, that's a joyful thing to see. That's for sure. Even though physically I can't see it, but by faith, man, I do have eyes to see. And so we walk by faith, not by what? Sight. That's right. So very cool chapter, amazing song, so many things to study, so many neat parts of it. And I just got to say, man, the Bible is super off the charts awesome. So you guys have a great one, okay? Take care. Thanks for joining me on the Morning Devo. Bye-bye.